Welcome in once again. Week 6 of the NFL season means we have another week of fantasy football where we need to set our lineups. I've got you covered for IDP rankings, top 12 defensive linemen, linebackers, and defensive back for week 6. So sit tight after the intro. We'll jump right into top 12s. Welcome back to the IDP Plus YouTube channel. On this series, I'm your host, Axton Harding. If you've been here before, you kind of know how this goes. You can follow me on Twitter at AxemanIDP. Feel free to throw out questions if you want me to elaborate on specific players. I'd be happy to do that. I tend to go more in depth there or even in the comments. So throw those comments down and I'll go into depth there as well. So if I don't list anybody, feel free to reach out to me about those guys. So let's not waste too much time here. Let's jump right into the top 12 rankings. Each week we do top 12 defensive linemen, linebackers, and defensive backs. So let's jump right into our defensive linemen for top 12 defensive linemen for this week. We've got Maxx Crosby at number 1, Brian Burns at 2, Nik Bonitto at 3, TJ Watt, Byron Young, Myles Garrett, Aidan Hutchinson, Bradley Chubb, Rashan Gary, Dorance Armstrong, Granderson, and Alex Highsmith to round out the top 12. So let's jump back up to the top, talk about some Maxx Crosby. This week he plays the Tennessee Titans. He comes into this one with 22 tackles, 2 sacks, 5 pass deflections, an interception, forced fumble, 8 tackles for loss, which is tied for lead. And then 6 quarterback hits as well. This week against the Tennessee Titans is a pretty favorable matchup as it relates to opposing production to opposing defensive ends. The offensive line is not great for Tennessee, and as a matter of fact, over the course of just the last 3 weeks, they're giving up an average of 2.33 sacks to the defensive end position to go with a little under 9 tackles per game. So coming into this matchup, Brian Burns already has a pretty high floor and a lot of opportunity for big plays. So the offensive line seems to be very vulnerable in terms of just box score production for us. So they've also allowed a single pass deflection to the defensive line in the last 3 weeks. Not that that's going to be a difference maker here. I think what we're looking for is quarterback hits, tackles for loss, and sacks with these kind of numbers that we're looking at here. So Brian Burns is in a great position. Or did I say Brian Burns? We're talking Maxx Crosby. Maxx Crosby is in a great position this week against one of the most vulnerable offensive lines in the league and a rookie quarterback. He should have a hellacious week this week and be able to get back there and sack some Cam Ward at least once this week. So Maxx Crosby ought to have is in a prime opportunity this week for week 6. Now let's talk about some Brian Burns. Brian Burns just tends to be in a top 10 matchup as it relates to sack production for opposing defensive ends. This week, he comes into week 6 with 23 tackles, 5 sacks, 3 passes defended, 1 forced fumble, a tackle for loss, and 9 quarterback hits coming into week 6. Playing the Philadelphia Eagles this week, who give up an average of a sack and a half roughly to defensive ends per game as of the last 3 weeks on average. They also give up just under 10 tackles per game, a little bit higher floor for tackle production, and a little bit lower floor for big play opportunity. But Brian Burns came away without a sack for the first time so far this season last week. I think he's due to bounce back here in a big game here on Thursday Night Football, a primetime matchup. Brian Burns is going to want to make a statement here, but it's going to be a tough one because Philadelphia just had their first loss of the season too, so they're going to want to make a statement. It ought to be a pretty good game, in all honesty. This pass rush ought to be able to get back there and disrupt things for Philadelphia. I think it's possible Brian Burns has himself a day. Big players show up in big-time situations. Then we talk about Nik Bonitto. He's going scorched earth this season. He's leading the league currently right now in sacks. Let's just talk about production for him coming into this one. 17 tackles, 7 sacks, league lead. 7 tackles for loss, and a whopping 14 quarterback hits. That's got to be up there for the league. So I would imagine that's probably top 5 for quarterback hits. Definitely league lead in sack production. So let's just kind of take a look at the matchup. I don't believe it was an incredible one here. Where are we at? There we go. Oh, he's got a top end matchup as it relates to sack production. The New York Jets this week is his matchup. They are giving up an average of about a sack and a half per game in the last 3 weeks to go with a little over 8 tackles per game. We're not really worried about that tackle floor with Nik Bonitto. We're more or less worried about that 1.5 sacks. But so far this season, he's been able to break about every mold as it relates to offenses giving up defensive production. Good players like to set those trends. Nik Bonitto ought to be able to get back there and disrupt some stuff for Justin Fields. Perhaps he catches him leaking out of the pocket or something like that. Either way, Nik Bonitto ought to have himself a good day here in their matchup against the New York Jets. Again, just a lot of opportunity on the table here. Big kind of situation. He's been on a tear. Denver's going to look to bring that pass rush and add a lot of pressure to Justin Fields. So Nik Bonitto is often the first one to land a sack there. So we'll just see kind of how many he can land, or just kind of what that ceiling is going to look like for this week. But there should be opportunity. TJ Watt comes in next. 19 tackles, 3 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, 6 quarterback hits, an interception, 2 pass deflections, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery coming into this one. He plays the Cleveland Browns, who are honestly a top 4 matchup for sack production to opposing defensive ends. They're giving up 1.67 sacks per game in the last 3 weeks on average. To go with 9 tackles as well, which is kind of middling for tackle production allowed in the last 3 weeks. TJ Watt's been pretty nice with the tackle floor this year. So he's already got kind of that high tackle floor coming in, and now he gets a top 5 sack matchup. So the big play opportunity should be plentiful here. They've also allowed 2 pass deflections in coverage as well, so he might be able to get a batted pass there on the defensive line. This ought to be a good matchup. He's going up against a rookie quarterback. Dillon Gabriel only gets his second start this week. Cleveland often has played a lot of snaps. We'll just kind of see if Dillon Gabriel can kind of maintain that to give us a lot more opportunities. But TJ Watt is in a great position here after having some rest from that week 5 bye. Byron Young comes in here next at number 5. He's got 29 tackles, 5.5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, 10 quarterback hits, and a forced fumble coming into this one. He plays Baltimore, who's now starting Cooper Rush. They've been an atrocious offense without Lamar Jackson. I anticipate them to go ahead and start him again should Lamar Jackson not be able to go. They should play it cautious, the Ravens, with his hamstring injury, but we'll just have to kind of wait and see. Should Cooper Rush get the start, he's going to be a statue back there, and it's just going to be a standing target for Byron Young and this LA Rams pass rush. And Byron Young has been getting that Micah Parsons treatment with Jared Verse on the other side. He's actually been the one that's been soaking up all the production while Jared Verse just kind of opens those doors for him. So if we're going to talk about his matchup this week specifically, top end matchup, the Baltimore Ravens are giving up a sack and a half per game in the last 3 weeks. Not a whole lot of tackle production on the table as of the last 3 weeks, but we'll just kind of have to see how things play out. But nonetheless, you're not going to sit Byron Young. He's been one of the top producers week after week. Even in porous matchups, he still finds a way to land things home because offenses just have to put so much focus on the opposite side of the line to account for Jared Verse. You can't account for Jared Verse, Kobe Turner, and Byron Young on this defensive line. And then you got Braden Fisk as well. There's just too much firepower here, and I expect Byron Young to kind of continue on the production that he started so far this season. Now we've got Myles Garrett. He's fallen a little bit here to number 6 just because of porous matchup. But coming into this week, he's got 21 tackles, 4 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, which is tied for league lead with Maxx Crosby. And then he's also got 8 quarterback hits on the season as well. Playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers are a bottom end matchup for defensive end sack production. In the last 3 weeks, they haven't allowed a single defensive end sack. But that's not to say that it can't happen. So Pittsburgh, I don't believe, has had illustrious matchups or very difficult matchups the last few weeks, but could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. Just kind of off the top, we'll just see here. But that tends to be kind of the case here, is just not really playing 2 effective pass rushes. If you're not giving up a single sack in the last 3 weeks, that's pretty impressive for that offensive line. But Myles Garrett is, again, one of those guys that's not going to be bucked by a trend. he's going to be one of those trendsetters. So, nonetheless, you're not going to sit Myles Garrett just because he's in a poor matchup here. There is 10 tackles on the table available for defensive ends. That's honestly probably one of the top end. Let's just see specifically. 10 tackles. Yeah, it's a top 10 matchup for tackle production defensive ends. So there's a little bit of opportunity there for tackle floor, but he's going to have to work a little extra to land some big play opportunities here. But Myles Garrett is not going to be one you're going to want to sit on the bench. Just he had a dud last week. I think we can expect some sort of bounce back this week, and we'll see kind of what that looks like. Now we've got Aidan Hutchinson here at number 7. He comes in with 12 tackles, 5 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, 12 quarterback hits, and 3 forced fumbles. He's done this in the last probably 3 weeks or so. He's been playing 90+% of snaps. That's outstanding. Probably one of the top snap counts in as far as defensive ends go. They're usually getting about 70 to 80% of snaps, usually in terms of like those full-time defensive ends. Maxx Crosby and Aidan Hutchinson are really about the only few that play 90% or more of snaps. More opportunity means more chances for big plays, more production opportunity. Aidan Hutchinson has garnered much of this production in the last few weeks because, as I mentioned in the offseason, he kind of had a slow start recovering, getting back to full game speed early on in the season, but now he's really heating up, and I anticipate that to continue this week. The Kansas City offensive line is vulnerable, and oftentimes if players aren't getting open, Patrick Mahomes will just kind of float around in the pocket back there. Aidan Hutchinson could end up very well tracking him down. They're going to have to make some big plays. This should be a big game this week. Detroit and Kansas City, possibly the best team in the league in Detroit lines, and then one of the historically Super Bowl contenders in the Chiefs. I think this ought to be a good back and forth affair. I bet Aidan Hutchinson, he's going to have to land a sack or get back there and disrupt some stuff and add some big play upside here for the Lions to to kind of keep going back and forth here with the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to need Aidan Hutchinson this week to disrupt some of that offense for Kansas City while they're down in the secondary. So Aidan Hutchinson ought to be in kind of a good position this week. The Chiefs don't really allow a whole lot of sack production. So let's just see. We're looking at they've given up 1 sack to defensive ends in the last few weeks, but 11 tackles per game. So we've got a high floor for tackles coming in. He just might have to work a little harder for the big play opportunities. But again, big time game. It's not like either team's going to run away with this one. I think it's going to be it's going to be back and forth. So Aidan Hutchinson ought to be in a good spot this week. Now let's look at Bradley Chubb. We got Bradley Chubb coming in here, making an appearance in the top 12 at number 8. He comes in with 14 tackles, 4 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. He's actually done pretty well coming off that gnarly injury from a year ago. He plays the Chargers this week, who have a hampered offensive line. They're down 3 starting offensive linemen. So that just spells an outstanding matchup for the Miami pass rush. So let's just kind of take a look at the opportunity. Yeah, it's in terms of averages and production given up, it's going to be the best matchup that we can possibly have in terms of what's been given up in box score production the last few weeks. The Chargers have given up 3 sacks per game on average to defensive ends in the last 3 weeks. They've also given up 11 tackles per game, which is a top 5 matchup in both categories. So Bradley Chubb, I don't have him ranked higher. I haven't seen top and overall defensive lineman production, but he's been very consistent. He's had a very high floor, and he's been able to get back there and convert pressures into sacks. So Bradley Chubb, 3 sacks on the table already coming into this week and 11 tackles. He should have a high floor for production and a lot of opportunity for big plays this week. So I like Bradley Chubb's matchup. Even a little bit of Jalen Phillips. I'm not really as excited about Jalen Phillips, but Bradley Chubb's been pretty consistent so far this season. Now let's talk about Rashan Gary. Rashan Gary for the Green Bay Packers comes into this week with 17 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 7 quarterback hits, so far on this season, playing the Cincinnati Bengals, who now get Joe Flacco. That trade just went down yesterday. The Cincinnati Bengals traded a 6th and like a couple of late picks for Joe Flacco. So not that that's going to be their savior, going to turn things around. Joe Flacco, they still have a terrible offensive line. So let's just talk about that terrible offensive line. It's going to be a top 7 matchup for sack production allowed. They give up 1 2/3 sacks per game to the defensive end position. There's not a whole lot of tackle production on the table in this one for Rashan Gary, but he's not really a tackle guy. Green Bay is going to look to kind of make a statement here with Joe Flacco now coming in. And their pass rush has been incredible. And again, Rashan Gary's been getting that Micah Parsons treatment where offensive lines are having to focus so much energy on Micah Parsons and that side of the defensive line. They totally leave the other side wide open. And Rashan Gary, with his 4.5 sacks this season, has taken advantage early on. I expect that to continue this week. He's got a big opportunity against a weak offensive line and a battered up team who's looking to do anything to turn things around. So I think Rashan Gary this week should be able to capitalize on some opportunity. Now we've got Dorance Armstrong here at number 10. He comes in with 22 tackles, 5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, and 6 quarterback hits, and he plays the Chicago Bears this week, who historically have been a pretty stingy offensive line. And if we want to talk about production allowed, it's a middling matchup. They give up about 1 1/3 sacks per game, but there's opportunity here in coverage. They do give up about just under 2 pass deflections a game to opposing defensive ends on that defensive line. Caleb Williams is a little bit careless at the line of scrimmage, so there might be some opportunity for a batted pass. Some big plays there as it relates to that. Then they also give up over a sack per game to the defensive end position. If anybody on this defensive line, he and Von Miller is probably going to garner much of the attention, much like the Micah Parsons treatment kind of thing. Von Miller's the primary focus for opposing offensive lines, but that may not last too awful long if Dorance Armstrong can continue this kind of production. And I think it's very possible that he can come in and kind of set the tone here against the Chicago Bears offense. But so far, he's come in with a high floor. Hasn't really mattered too much of the matchup. He's been able to produce for us. Nothing just insane, but definitely a high floor kind of player. He's been startable each week, for the most part anyways. Let's see. Now let's talk Carl Granderson against the New England Patriots this week. He comes in with 26 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 6 quarterback hits, and 2 pass deflections in coverage. Here, let's see. For the New Orleans Saints, they've got a top 10 matchup against the New England Patriots, who give up a sack and a half per game over the last 3 weeks to opposing defensive ends. A little under 9 tackles per game, or a little under 9 tackles on the table as well coming into this matchup for Carl Granderson, who's had a high tackle floor coming in. So he didn't quite land a sack last week, but this could be his week to kind of turn things around. New Orleans is going to have to do something to kind of disrupt this New England offensive team who's been kind of just scorching the last couple of weeks. They've been, I say that pretty lightly, but yeah, they've actually been an upward trending offense. And so I imagine that there should be plenty of chances for long sustained drives, more tackling opportunity, lots of plays here. But you know what? They're actually probably middling in terms of snaps overall, but they've been able to push the ball downfield, and this should be kind of a back and forth affair. New Orleans has been competitive; they haven't been great, but they've been able to stay in games. And New England, I think, has been kind of hot. They're due to come down a little bit and be a little bit more back and forth here. I think they had a pretty good game last week where they upset the Buffalo Bills. I anticipate that to just completely carry this game away, but they've been doing really well, which is successful offenses lead to a lot of production on the other side too. So Carl Granderson should do just fine this week against the Patriots. Now we've got Alex Highsmith rounding out the top 12. We've got another Pittsburgh pass rusher here. He should be coming back. If not him, look at Nick Herbig. He's going to be the same kind of player here in the same kind of situation. Highsmith comes in with 9 tackles, a sack, a tackle for loss, and 3 quarterback hits. So he's missed the last few games. He hasn't had a whole lot of opportunity to garner a lot of production here, but coming into this week against the Cleveland Browns presents a top-end matchup, a top 5 matchup, where the Cleveland Browns are giving up 1.67 sacks per game in the last 3 weeks, with 9 tackles on the table as well, which is kind of middling overall. But I mentioned earlier when I was talking about TJ Watt, this should be a big-time opportunity against a young quarterback. The Cleveland Browns historically are playing a lot of snaps, about 71 snaps per game, which is top of the league over the course of the last 3 weeks. Dylan Gabriel being that rookie quarterback is going to be prone to making mistakes. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for this Pittsburgh pass rush to get back there to the quarterback. Again, if Alex Highsmith is out, you might even be able to kind of tandem Alex Highsmith and Nick Herbig. I've heard a lot of chatter about potential rotation whenever Alex Highsmith comes back, that Nick Herbig might get a bigger snap count. But nonetheless, they're in a good spot this week against the, oh my gosh, who I just said it, the Cleveland Browns. Excuse me. All right, now let's get into some linebackers here. Top 12 linebackers for Week 6. We've got Foyesade Oluokun, Fred Warner, Ernest Jones, Zack Baun, Bobby Wagner, Quay Walker, Patrick Queen, Alex Singleton, Jordyn Brooks, Daiyan Henley, Edgerrin Cooper, and Nick Bolton to round out the top 12. Back up to the top, we've got Foyesade Oluokun, who came into a terrible production matchup last week against the Kansas City Chiefs, and I told y'all he's going to end up producing no matter what. His line was 7.5 tackles. He ended up with 14 tackles, and I watched him miss about 4 or 5 tackles. So he left about four tackles on the table and even still got 14. This guy is he's going to be that trendsetter. He's going to be the guy that's going to produce regardless of matchup. But let's talk about him coming into this week with 44 tackles, a sack, 2 tackles for loss, a quarterback hit, 2 pass deflections, an interception, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. This week, he plays the Seattle Seahawks. Let's see what kind of production. It's the top 10 matchup for tackle production. Seahawks are giving up 19 tackles per game over the course of the last 3 weeks. They've also given up a pass deflection and interception to opposing linebackers as well in that time. So this ought to be a great matchup for Foyesade to get in there and kind of replicate what we saw last week, if not improve. Foyesade is going to continue to be a top-end producer week in and week out. Fred Warner, same way. Fred Warner comes in with 50 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 3 passes deflected, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery in the first 5 weeks. Now he plays the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay presents a middling matchup for linebacker tackle production. 17 tackles available on the table coming into this one. They also have given up half sack per game so far this season. I might need to double check my numbers there. But no less, they've allowed big plays for opposing linebackers. Fred Warner's in on the pass rush. He's in coverage. They've given up a single pass deflection to opposing linebackers. There ought to be opportunity on the table here for Fred Warner to meet or exceed his kind of 8 to 9 tackle average here. I think he ought to be able to get up there and get 10 tackles, maybe even get a pass deflection or some sort of big play to add to that, add to your IDP rosters. Ernest Jones at number 3. He comes into this week with 40 tackles, a half sack, 2 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, 3 pass deflections. This week he plays the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's kind of a middling matchup for production allowed, 16.67 tackles per game allowed over the course of the last 3 weeks. They have allowed over 1.33 pass deflections per game in the last 3 weeks. So there's some opportunity in coverage for Ernest Jones to maybe get his hands on a batted ball, maybe come down with an interception, get some big plays that way. In addition to adding to his tackle floor, there's 16.67 tackles. He's going to garner much of that because Seattle's not playing a full-time second linebacker right now. They're kind of rotating between a couple of guys, and but the guy who's going to be on the field the most, Ernest Jones, ought to be the first one to collect as many tackles as he can of these 16. So I like his spot this week. Then we got Zack Baun here at number 4. Zack Baun playing the New York Giants this week on Thursday Night Football. Prime time matchup. He comes in with 42 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits, an interception, a pass deflection, and a forced fumble. He's been continuing that production we saw him garnering up last week and this week, last year, and this week playing against the New York Giants. Presents an outstanding matchup, a top 2 matchup for tackle production allowed over the course of the last 3 weeks. They're giving up over 21 tackles per game to opposing linebackers. Zack Baun ought to have a very high tackle floor as it sits just coming into this game. There's going to be plenty of floor production here available. They've also given up a couple of pass deflections in coverage, not giving up a sack to opposing linebackers, but that doesn't mean it can't happen. We've now got a rushing quarterback in for the New York Giants, which kind of tends to lead to a a little bit more opportunity for sack production for opposing linebackers, just kind of catching those scrambles off the edge to get them tackled behind the line of scrimmage. That's a sack. So there might be some sack production here. Either way, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for Zack Baun in week 6. So let's talk about Bobby Wagner here at number 5. That's it. Yeah. Bobby Wagner at 5 here comes in with 56 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks coming into week 6. Playing the Chicago Bears this week. Chicago presents a middling matchup for linebacker tackle production. They're giving up about 18 tackles per game. Bobby Wagner's been that trendsetter. He's been about 8 to 10 tackles per game pretty consistently so far this season. So I don't really have an issue if we're getting a middling to high end matchup. He's going to overproduce or outproduce those expectations. Bobby Wagner's done it all year. He's even been in on the pass rush as well. But Chicago has been pretty stingy for linebacker sacks allowed. There hasn't been any allowed in the last 3 weeks, but that doesn't mean there won't be. Bobby Wagner, again, one of those high end producers, and he's one of the trendsetters for the top 12 linebackers. He ought to be in a good spot here to soak up plenty of production. Quay Walker at 6 against the Cincinnati Bengals. Quay Walker comes into the game or into this week with 42 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 pass deflections in coverage. Presents a top 10 matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals, who now get, again, Joe Flacco. Should be a little bit different offense, a little bit more competitive, more downfield opportunities, not in passing, but they ought to be more sustained drives, more plays per drive, just because of Joe Flacco's presence. But again, the offensive line isn't great, so we just kind of have to see how things shake out. But 18 tackles per game on the table for Quay Walker. This offense in Cincinnati has also given up 3 sacks to opposing linebackers in the last 3 weeks, so they are giving up an average of a sack per game to opposing linebackers. Quay Walker, Edge Cooper, whoever gets the opportunity to rush the passer ought to be able to get back there and land a sack this week if trends continue. Pass deflections and coverage. There's a lot of big play upside, a lot of big play opportunity. They're allowing 1 pass deflection per game. They've given up an interception in the last 3 weeks. There's a lot of big play upside here for these Green Bay Packers linebackers. So Quay Walker, historically, more often than not, if they're both going to produce, Quay Walker's been the guy that's been producing more, so I put him up higher in the rankings this week. But they both land in a good spot. Patrick Queen makes the top 12 at number 7 here against the Cleveland Browns this week. He comes in with 35 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, a sack, a quarterback hit, and 2 pass deflections in coverage. Going up against the Cleveland Browns this week, who present a top 8 matchup for tackles allowed per game at 19.67 tackles allowed per game. So a top 7 matchup for linebacker tackle production. So we've got a high floor coming into this game. They've also given up 2 sacks to opposing linebackers in the last 3 weeks, so about 0.67 per game over the course of the last 3 weeks. They've given up a pass deflection and coverage as well. There should be plenty of opportunity for Pittsburgh linebackers, and Patrick Queen has been doing pretty well this season so far. So I think he's already had a pair of 13 to 14 tackle games. I think he can continue that this week with maybe some opportunity for some more big plays in this one against Cleveland. Let's talk Alex Singleton at number 8 against the New York Jets this week. He comes in with 44 tackles, a sack, a tackle for loss, 2 quarterback hits, and a pass deflection in coverage. Against the New York Jets, we're looking at the best matchup for tackle production allowed over the course of the last 3 weeks. They've given up a whopping 22.67 tackles per game to linebackers. Guess what? Alex Singleton is the only full-time linebacker for the Denver Broncos. He's a guy who's been able to get up there and get dang near 20 tackles in a game. He's kind of coming on a little bit slow so far this season after that gnarly injury last year, but nonetheless, he's been a nice producer for us so far. Nothing too crazy, but this is a big-time opportunity for him to kind of get back to those old ways. He's going to have plenty of production already just coming into the door. They've also given up sack production, 0.67 sacks per game in the last 3 weeks, also the same amount in pass deflections and coverage. So there's going to be a high floor of tackles coming in, and then some big play upside and opportunity available for Alex Singleton this week. So love that for Alex Singleton. Now we've got Jordyn Brooks at number 9. Jordyn Brooks comes into this week with 7 tackles, which is league lead, 1.5 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, 2 quarter hits. and now he plays the Chargers this week. Again, a battered offensive line, which may or not lend well to our production here for linebackers. We just hope that they can still remain on the field and not go 3 and out every time. 3 and outs don't work well for us with IDP production. There's just not a whole lot of opportunity. You can't get any kind of momentum going. But nonetheless, with Justin Herbert, they ought to be okay. We'll just kind of see how things play out. Hasn't looked great lately, but Miami's a little bit less competitive. Let's see. So the Chargers, yeah. Bottom end matchup for production allowed, 16 tackles on the table coming into this one. But Tyrell Dodson is not looking promising for this week. Maybe there's a little bit more opportunity for him to take up some more of those 16 tackles because Tyrell's been up there among the league leaders in tackles and tackling production as well. So I think, regardless, Jordyn Brooks, regardless of matchup, has been a top-end producer. He's been able to put up about 10 tackles per game, roughly. I think this ought to be a fine matchup for Jordyn Brooks. It's not necessarily a top-end matchup, but top-end linebackers are going to set the trends. They're going to be the ones that kind of buck the historical data averages. So I think Jordyn Brooks is going to should be a top 12 linebacker again this week. Daiyan Henley at number 10 against the Miami, on the other side of the ball there, against the Miami Dolphins. He plays for the Chargers. He comes in with 39 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits, an interception, and 2 pass deflections in coverage. Henley's been able to add to the game in multiple ways. Rushing passer, getting his hands on some balls in coverage. Again, this is another bottom-end matchup. 15.67 tackles available on the table coming into this one. There might be some opportunity in coverage. Tua Tagovailoa is a mistake-prone quarterback, so he's kind of bound to try to throw some balls in some tight windows where linebackers can kind of get their hands in there and deflect some passes, get us some big play points there. But don't expect a game-breaking week from Daiyan Henley, but he also just comes in with a high floor production, just that proven production that he's already put on the table. And then also we've got the 15.67 tackles per game on the table as well, just coming into the matchup. So bumped him down a little bit this week. I'm not expecting as high of a game or as good of a game as we like to see historically from Daiyan Henley this week, but there is some opportunity. He's just going to have to work a little bit harder. Edgerrin Cooper comes in next at number 11. He's got 33 tackles, a half sack, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 pass deflections in coverage. Again, playing the Cincinnati Bengals offense is going to be a nice little matchup for these Green Bay Packers linebackers. I'll just kind of reiterate that 18.33 tackles per game allowed, a sack per game allowed over the last 3 weeks, a pass deflection allowed over the last 3 weeks, and there's even been an interception allowed over the last 3 weeks to opposing linebackers. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for some big plays here, and I think Edgerrin Cooper, if not even getting pass deflections and coverage, perhaps he gets that sack on the quarterback or maybe an interception or something like that. But yeah, these Green Bay linebackers can be in a good spot this week, especially against Joe Flacco. So let's talk about Nik Bolton to round out the top 12. Nik Bolton comes in with a nice quiet 46 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a quarterback hit, pass deflection, and a forced fumble last week on Trevor Lawrence. They play the Detroit Lions this week. Big games often lead to a lot of production for both sides of the ball because Kansas City and Detroit ought to go back and forth. This ought to be a pretty competitive game. I don't imagine Detroit's just going to run away with this one like they have historically. I know the Chiefs just lost to Jacksonville. Jacksonville played pretty damn well, and Kansas City honestly kind of gave that one up to them a few times. But I don't anticipate to happen against Detroit. They're going to want to buckle down. Kansas City's going to want to be more competitive in this one. So I think it's going to be a little bit more back and forth. And we're not really looking at we're looking at top 9 matchup for production allowed. Detroit gives up about 19.67 tackles per game to the linebacker position, but not a lot of big play opportunity. That doesn't mean there isn't going to be any. Big games, a lot of back and forth, a lot of long sustained drives. There's going to be a lot of opportunity here for Nik Bolton to kind of get back there and disrupt some things for the offense, perhaps even rush the passer. He's been in there a little bit in the pass rush game, but more or less in coverage as well, where he might be able to get his hands on some batted passes or on some get his hands on some passes and again garner some pass deflections. But nonetheless, Nik Bolton's been a top-end producer so far this season. I expect that to continue in a big matchup against the Detroit Lions. So that was the top 12 linebackers. Now let's talk about the top 12 DBs. I am no DB expert, but I do my best here. We try to get the most consistent guys because the defensive back position can be so up and down. And sometimes defensive back streaming is the way to go. If you want a guy who knows his streaming, go check out Johnny the Greek on Twitter of the IDP show. He has the cornerback corner every week. He'll list out the best matchups for a cornerback production, and he'll kind of lay out his best plays. He's honestly got about a 70% hit rate. So go check out Johnny the Greek on Twitter. It's Orange Man. Look up Orange Man, and then there's a series of numbers afterwards. But guy knows his stuff. But I'm going to give my best go here at the top 12. We've got Tykee Smith, Kam Curl, Derwin James, Cooper DeJean, Tre'Von Moehrig, Jourdan Lewis, Nik Cross, Brian Branch, Marques Sigle, Kevin Byard, Talanoa Hufanga, and then Minkah Fitzpatrick here for the top 12. Let's go back up and talk about Tykee Smith. Playing against the San Francisco 49ers this week, he comes in with 39 tackles, a sack, 2 tackles for loss, a quarterback hit, 6 pass deflections, and a fumble recovery so far this season. Let's go in and take a look at the matchup here against San Francisco. Actually, a lot of this, so I can easily flip back and forth. In San Francisco, we're looking at top 2 matchup, second best matchup for safety tackle production. They're giving up 16.67 tackles per game to the safety position. Tykee Smith is going to gobble up a whole bunch of those. The majority of those that are going to be given to opposing safeties. So 16.67 tackles on the table already just coming into this game. Tykee Smith ought to have a big day in the office. Kam Curl comes in with 42 tackles, a sack, 2 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, and 3 pass deflections so far this season. Now he plays the Baltimore Ravens, who, again, as I mentioned earlier, have Cooper Rush at quarterback. So a little bit, these numbers are not quite, they're skewed a little bit away from historical averages with Cooper Rush under center. Obviously, 2 of these 3 games that I have on average were under Lamar Jackson. But nonetheless, see what kind of matchup we've got here for the LA Rams. Yeah, it's not been great, Bob. 10 tackles allowed per game over the course of the last 3 weeks. But there's some big play opportunity where they've given up a couple of interceptions in the last 3 weeks. So there might be some chances for Kam Curl to come in and get some pass deflections, get another interception. He's already got 3 on the year. He's one of those players that it doesn't really matter the matchup. Again, as I mentioned, top-end producers set those trends. So just because it's a poor matchup doesn't necessarily mean that he's not going to produce. This ought to be... There should still be some opportunity here for Kam Curl. He's been a high floor tackle kind of guy so far this season. Coming in 42 tackles. He's got the most tackles on the season of any of the defensive backs I'm going to talk about today. So high floor kind of player. I don't think we want to pay as much attention to that matchup just because he's not really going to follow that trend. He's going to be probably gobbling up a lot of those 10 tackles available on the table for this matchup. So let's talk Derwin James. Derwin James at number 3 this week comes in with 37 tackles, a sack and a half, 5 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, 2 pass deflections in coverage. Derwin James has been outstanding this season, and now he gets a middling matchup against the Miami Dolphins. I think this is going to be a more competitive matchup than we want to think. A little bit more back and forth. The Chargers are competitive enough, even with offensive linemen down, they ought to be able to compete with Miami, and Miami's not an overproducer of a team by any stretch of the imagination. They don't just go out and blow teams out. They usually like to keep games that they ought to win close and underplay often. Underplay their kind of ceiling, I guess. So this could be a back and forth affair. There are 14.33 tackles on the table on average in games against Miami for opposing safeties. Again, Tua Tagovailoa is a mistake-prone quarterback, and there might be some opportunity here in coverage. He hasn't given up but maybe a single pass deflection to opposing safeties in the last few games, so he's been okay. but I don't expect that to continue. Tua's had not had a complete season so far this season, or so far in his career, where I think he might have had one or two healthy and full seasons, but I'm not even going to say they were his absolute ceiling the entire season. He's kind of an up and down kind of guy. So Derwin James ought to be able to get back there, and if nothing else, maybe rush the passer and get us some big play, get us some big plays here against this Miami offense. Cooper DeJean at number 4 against the New York Giants. He comes in with 36 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 4 pass deflections. He's just been a hell of a tackler, pure tackler for us, and that's kind of what we're going to be targeting here as he plays the New York Giants. It's a top 10 matchup for tackle production to opposing safeties. There's been 14.33 tackles on the table per game to opposing safeties just coming into this one. They play on a primetime matchup. It's going to be a big game. I imagine there should be plenty of IDP production. And if nothing else, then I think we're going to expect a lot of Cooper DeJean is going to be in and around the line of scrimmage. And if the Philadelphia gets up, what's the quarterback? Jackson Dart might be looking to scramble a little bit, and he might be able to catch him for a sack off the edge there as he lines up around the line of scrimmage. There should be some opportunity here for Cooper DeJean. It hasn't really mattered the matchup. He's been able to produce a nice tackling floor for us of 5 to 6 plus tackles per game, and then he's been able anything on top of that for defensive back production is just icing on the top. So if you can just get a high floor tackler, that's ideal. And then from there, you just kind of let them add the big plays. Cooper DeJean is one of those pure tackler kind of guys. So he ought to do fine this week against the Giants. Now we've got Tre'Von Moehrig here, number 5. He comes in with 36 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and a quarterback hit. Another one of those pure tackler kind of guys. You're not going to set Tre'Von Moehrig. He's got a high floor for tackle production. And he comes into this week with a top 10 matchup, a little over 14 tackles per game on the table. There's a pass deflection per game on the table as well. Dallas has given up an interception to opposing safeties, 1 single interception in the last 3 weeks. There should be plenty of passing, should be plenty of chances for Tre'Von Moehrig to get in on some big plays here. So, but we're more or less looking for that high tackle floor out of Tre'Von Moehrig. So I expect that trend to continue. He should be good for 6 to 8 tackles in this one, like he is most weeks, and then from there, maybe he can get a tackle behind the line of scrimmage or get his hands on a pass deflection or something. Now we've got Jourdan Lewis at number 6 against the Seattle Seahawks this week. He's got 20 tackles coming into this one, 3 tackles for loss, a quarterback hit, 2 interceptions, 7 pass deflections, and a fumble recovery. He's been outstanding in coverage so far this season. Now he gets the Seattle Seahawks, who are a high-volume passing offense. Seattle, let's just kind of check this out. A middling matchup for just tackle production in general. 14 tackles per game allowed on average over the course of the last 3 weeks. There's been a pass deflection allowed in coverage each of the last 3 games as well. So there might be some chances here for Jourdan Lewis to get his hands on some Sam Darnold passes. He's been a guy who has been known to make mistakes, and there should be, again, a high-volume passing offense. There should be lots of opportunity for him to add to that 7 pass deflections in coverage and get us some big plays. Again, 2 interceptions, 7 pass deflections. That's pretty impressive. He's getting heavily involved and being targeted on defense. That's what we like to see, him being around the ball and just be able to be in a position to be able to make plays. And he's able to do that for himself, put himself in the right spot. So I like Jourdan Lewis to continue this kind of production this week, maybe get some more big plays, perhaps catch an interception off of Sam Darnold. Nik Cross, another pure tackler here at number 7, plays Arizona this week. He comes in with a whopping 41 tackles, a sack and a half, 3 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 pass deflections in coverage. So he's in on the pass rush. He's a high floor tackle kind of guy, and he's even getting his hands on some batted balls in coverage. Well, let's take a look at this matchup against Arizona. Bottom end matchup for just overall production allowed on the table coming into this game, 9 tackles per game on average given up. They've allowed 2 pass deflections and coverage in the last 3 weeks to opposing safeties. They've also given up an interception in that time as well. But Nik Cross he's not going to follow those tackle trends. He's probably going to get you about 5 to 8 tackles in this game as well, much like he has so far this season. Just hope that he can get back there, maybe rush the passer, get some tackles behind the line of scrimmage, get his hands on some of those passes from Kyler Murray, who's kind of struggled so far this season. But nonetheless, Nik Cross is going to be one of the highest floor kind of players in IDP as far as defensive backs go anyways. So we're playing him this week against Arizona. Now we're going to Branch at 8. He's still fine. It's just kind of not really a high production matchup coming into this one against the Kansas City Chiefs. But again, top end players are going to set trends. He's still a top 12 at DB1. He comes in with 26 tackles, a sack, 4 tackles for loss, a quarterback hit, 5 pass deflections, and a forced fumble. Big game. Brian Branch, I expect, should be in and making big plays against this Kansas City team. Kansas City presents a bottom end matchup with only 12.67 tackles on the table coming into this matchup for just production available to opposing safeties. So Brian Branch, I think he's going to buck that trend, should be able to get in on some big plays, perhaps rush the passer or something like that. But big game, Brian Branch ought to do fine this week. Now let's talk Marques Sigle of the San Francisco 49ers playing Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. He's got 39 tackles, 2 pass deflections, and a fumble recovery so far this season. Playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers should be a back and forth game, a lot of competition. A lot of long sustained drives. There's only 13 tackles available on the table on average per game this season for production allowed to opposing safeties as it relates to Tampa Bay's offense. But there might be some big play upside here, some pass deflections. They give up over a pass deflection per game to the position over the course of the last 3 weeks. So there might be some big play upside here, but nonetheless, Sigle has been a high floor tackler, and I don't think this 13 tackles per game is going to throw him down too much. I expect about 6 to 8 tackles, kind of much of like what he's been doing. And with a game that's expected to kind of go back and forth and remain pretty close, there should be plenty of snaps played in this one. Tampa Bay often plays, top 5 to 10 most snaps per game so far this season, at least in the last. No, that's over the course of the season. So 68 snaps per game on the table for a high floor tackler. That's a lot of opportunity to kind of raise that floor. So I like Sigle this week. Now we've got Kevin Byard of the Chicago Bears. Plays against Washington this week. He's got 23 tackles, a tackle for loss, 3 interceptions, and 3 pass deflections in coverage so far this season. I just love Kevin Byard for a high floor kind of player who can add some big plays to his game as well. And in this matchup against the Washington Commanders, again, only about 13 tackles on the table just coming into the game. But we're talking about Kevin Byard. He's going to get you about 5 to 7 tackles per game, and if he doesn't, he's probably going to get you a pass deflection or perhaps a big play pass deflection. He's got 3 interceptions so far this season, 3 out of 5 games, 3 interceptions in 5 games. That's pretty damn good so far. So Kevin Byard should remain a high floor kind of player this week against Washington. Chicago and Washington ought to be a pretty good game, be able to go back and forth. Jaden Daniels could be prone to making some sort of mistakes, but he's got Terry McLaurin has been out. I'll have to see if he's coming back this week, but that would mean that he's playing with more inexperienced pass catchers. So could be opportunity for guys who maybe not be in the right spot. Kevin Byard maybe get back there and disrupt some stuff in the pass game, get his hands on some batted balls. Nonetheless, should be Kevin Byard ought to be. He's a high floor kind of player. Doesn't really matter the matchup. He's going to be a producer for us week in and week out. Now Talanoa Hufanga at number 11 against the Jets this week. He's got 35 tackles, a quarterback hit, 3 pass deflections, and a forced fumble coming into this week against the New York Jets. The Jets present not really a great matchup for production in the passing game, but these guys are playing around the line of scrimmage. Hufanga is involved in the passing game, but he's also in on a lot of run defensive plays as well. Just under 11 tackles on the table coming into this game on average for safeties playing against the New York Jets. They have given up a sack to safeties so far in the last 3 weeks. They've given up 2 pass deflections to the position in the last 3 weeks. So there might be some opportunity here for Hufanga to maybe get back there, get a sack on Justin Fields. I know we kind of talked about this as well with Alex Singleton. There's just going to be some big play opportunity here for the guys playing around the line of scrimmage and everybody playing in the box. Hufanga is one of those guys that's going to kind of be in those lucrative positions. And he's been a high floor player coming into this one. Also been able to add some of that big play upside as well. So there should be some chances here. Hufanga should be one of the top producers for much of the season. Minkah Fitzpatrick finds himself here now in the top 12 for the first time this season. I'm not particularly too excited about Minkah as Minkah the player. He's more of a real-life NFL football player than a guy I really want to roster and try to start each week. But this week he does find himself in a great matchup against the Chargers. Let's just see here for tackling production. It's a top 10 matchup where there's a little over 14 tackles allowed per game over the course of the last 3 weeks on the table. Just coming into this one, there's pass deflection on the table as well. They average giving up 1 pass deflection in coverage per game. They've also given up an interception in the last 3 weeks as well. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick against the Chargers is going to have to kind of come in here and make some big plays to keep this Miami team competitive. And he's been doing solid the last couple of weeks. We hope that trend can continue. There should be some opportunity here against the LA Chargers. So to round out let's just go back real quick. Top 12 defensive line: Maxx Crosby, Brian Burns, Nik Bonitto, TJ Watt, Byron Young, Myles Garrett, Aidan Hutchinson, Bradley Chubb, Rashan Gary, Dorance Armstrong, Granderson, and Highsmith. For linebackers, we've got Foyesade Oluokun, Fred Warner, Ernest Jones, Zack Baun, Bobby Wagner, Quay Walker, Patrick Queen, Alex Singleton, Jordyn Brooks, Daiyan Henley, Edgerrin Cooper, and Nick Bolton. Defensive backs, we've got Tykee Smith, Kam Curl, Derwin James, Cooper DeJean, Tre'Von Moehrig, Jourdan Lewis, Nick Cross, Brian Branch, Marques Sigle, Kevin Byard, Talanoa Hufanga, and Minkah Fitzpatrick rounding out the top 12 defensive backs. So that's going to do it for the IDP rankings on week 6 of the IDP Plus podcast. Again, as a reminder, my name is Axton Harding, and I am your host on this show. You can find me on Twitter at AxmanIDP. DMs are always open. Bear with me. I'm a busy guy, but I do always tend to get back and do my best to get back to you guys with details. So if you have questions about guys I talked about or guys not on this list, ask me to elaborate. I'd be happy to. It just gives me pleasure knowing you guys value my opinion enough to even ask. So throw it in the comments, throw me some DMs, whatever you got to do. And also, good luck this week. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you'll find me next week as well for some week 7 rankings. But again, good luck. Hopefully we can come away with some fantasy football wins this week. So we'll see you next week for week 7 rankings.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.